wealthy be they meet.
What's best for our music?
Standing firm for all that we should be. We do what's good for banking governance. Learn the rules and give them prominence. Let's make sure of what is truly right. They will be the trusted line. We are the members of the APB, serving all who are in our society.
Onwards to the future.
We do ascend with challenges and tests. We shall contend by building on the strength we uphold. With backwards ethics, we'll be bold. Empowering professionals, we are committed. Since 1988, we stand united. We stand united.
Thank you, Tusita. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this 8th session that we are holding by APB Continuous Professional Development Committee to its members. And today we have as our guest speaker, Mr. Omar Khan, a well-known globally accredited personality in leadership development. Mr. Khan is the founder and senior partner of Sensei International. Sensei supports some of the world's leading organizations with leadership and business development challenges. Mr. Omar is also one of the early pioneers in neuro-linguistic programming and transformational learning. He has had a diversified exposure in conducting training programs globally over 3 decades. Mr. Khan is also an accomplished author of many books, and also some of his articles have been published in leading business magazines such as the Washington Times. We also have with us today Mr. Ranjan De Silva. He's also overlooking the Asia operations of Sensei, and we have Pratana also with us from Sensei joining in this session. So I'll hand over this session to our president, Arna Fernandez, to speak a few words about APB, and then we'll hand over to Mr. Omar so that he can start the session with his presentation. Over to you, Arna.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Very good evening. I think our CPDC, that is Continuous Professional Development Committee, had been very active since last year. Despite the lockdowns and the curfews, they had been doing the work and living up to the expectations of APB. And actually, this happens to be the 7th webinar that they are organizing. So I believe that the members will be in a position to benefit from all these online webinars. And talking about APB, I think coming weeks will be sort of going to be a very busy period for APB, because we are getting ready for the Mr. K. Sivaganathan Memorial Oration, which will happen on the 11th of March. That is also going to be a webinar. Then on the 22nd, the main event of the APB calendar. Last year we could not have the APB convention, but we are getting ready to have a research symposium. So the researchers had been completed, and this will happen on the 22nd of March at the Grand Ballroom of Hilton Colombo. So I think that's going to be a grand occasion for APB. So I expect all the members to be there to learn all these things. And talking about the today's session, I think our committee had got down a world-renowned speaker in Mr. Omar Khan, and he's a highly sought-after speaker when it comes to all this leadership development. So I'm really happy that Mr. Ranjan De Silva and Ms. Pratana, both of them had been helping APB with all these activities. So let's look forward to a very interesting evening, and I will hand over the mic to Jeremy to continue.
Okay, thank you, Arna. Also from Sensei, we have Mr. Rohan Dias. We welcome you also on the forum. So we'll hand over to Mr. Omar to start his presentation. Pratana, you can coordinate the slides with Mr. Omar. So over to you, Omar.
All right, well, thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure. As you'll see, hopefully on your screen, what we're talking about, we were grappling with what would be most value adding, and it seemed to me that the perennial topic in crisis is excellence. There is no other topic, because excellence is timeless, it's perennial, it's what our organizations were created to deliver, it's what every circumstance requires us to grapple with. The only thing is that excellence means different things in different moments. Just a housekeeping request, as Jeremy requested, if you could mute your mics, unless you're co-delivering with me and I don't know it, in which case welcome. But if you would, just so that people can hear me with as little distortion as possible, thank you so kindly. Zoom, you can put the slide back up. We'll move to the next slide. So it says, it's always excellence, everything changes but that. So who defines it? Well, it's always only defined by your customers, your stakeholders, your marketplace. Excellence is not a private meditation. There are companies that keep flattering themselves at how exemplary they are through irrelevant metrics. And I used to put up in a lot of my sessions a simple graphic which said profit over time. So if you imagine profit on one axis and time on the other, I don't know, stay put, don't run away. Profit on one and time on the other. When people saw that their profits were going up, they congratulated themselves. Of course, this was irrelevant because it was the rate of change relative to the marketplace. So if you're growing by 5% and the market is growing by 30%, you're dead. On the other hand, if the market is collapsing and is doing minus 5% and you're eking out 0.2%, that could be magnificent. So it is the rate of innovation, of customer satisfying innovation, that determines your growth in profit over time terms. I remember back when I was here in Sri Lanka in the 90s, and hoteliers used to congratulate themselves that they had 90x% occupancy, except they were all the wrong tourists who came and had the set buffets, drank local beer, and went home. And so our share of wallet, of the global tourist wallet, was far too small, even if we were sold out to capacity. And so excellence has to be defined by picking metrics that matter and matter to your ideal customer and marketplace. Can you go back to the slide, please, we were on? And just leave it up while I chat, please. So the purpose of a business, says Peter Drucker, is to create a customer. Peter Drucker is the only I can't say thought leader, the only philosopher that management theory has produced. He is the man who invented popular management. People say Peter Drucker invented it and Tom Peters vivified it. He gave it some Red Bull, so to speak. But Peter Drucker, the grand old man of management, said the only purpose of a business note is not to serve a customer, is to create a customer. And I would suggest to you in post-pandemic times, the customer we're going to create may not be exactly the same as the customer we were serving. Their needs are different, their priorities are different, their realities are different, and our ability to respond, whether it's to institutional customers or individual customers or otherwise, is going to have to evolve. And that means we have to be good at throughout the marketplace and across the front line, having what we call listening posts and relay stations, so that we can get that intelligence and make sure our innovation is not just introspective, inward looking, but relevant in solving those problems. And so, as ever, though I agree with you, whoever said that. That was a burst of life we heard. And I congratulate whoever was emitting that burst of life. I agree with you, sweetheart. Now, I can't compete with that, but I will continue nonetheless. So as ever, the defining features are competitive, differentiated, and capability-based. Just think about that for a moment. We have to compete. This is nothing different. All strategy. When I worked with Tom Peters, he used to say, all you need to know about strategy is don't compete with China on cost and don't compete with Walmart on price. If you understand that, then you understand everything about strategy, because then it's about value addition. And that means you have to find, even within one industry like banking, where can you be the most competitive? And then within that competitive space, where can you be most meaningfully differentiated? Because if you're unrecognizable from somebody else, then it's a coin toss. Then it's just who has better political connections or can work slavishly harder, even no matter how uninspired. And finally, capability-based. We have to build capabilities that today's and tomorrow's customers value, and we have to make sure our people excel, and our strategy is capability-based as much as it is opportunity-based. Because opportunities may be present galore, but if we don't have the capabilities to underwrite that, it's pointless. Next slide, please. After this pandemic period, we have to remember a little compassion. Everybody is shell-shocked. Your customers are shell-shocked. Your stakeholders are shell-shocked. You are shell-shocked. Your people are shell-shocked. And I think there must be a special place in hell for people who send out goofy positive statements every morning, which is fine. We need some goofy positive statements every so often. But it's got to be okay to say, I'm shell-shocked. Because the world changed. And the world changed more dramatically than after 9/11, than after tsunamis. I'm not saying the actual magnitude of what we went through is more than a tsunami or 9/11 or an Easter bombing. But I'm saying the world, because it changed everywhere. Right? There was no buffer zone. Everybody had the same reaction playbook at the same time. And so Philo of Alexandria, who was a student of Socrates, was reminded that whenever you run into people, no matter how aggressive, abrasive they might seem to be kind. Because everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. And if that's true any day, it is certainly true these days in particular. And the second orientation we need comes from William James, the father of practical psychology. And we used to teach this in our Mastery of Self classes, that if every time you look at someone, we were always taught that we have to compete with them and that we have to outdo them. Well, in this day and age, we may not have as many people running around, and so we have to get the best from each other. We've had to prune people. We've had to scale down. We have to do more with less. And so we have to get leverage. And William James reminds us, everyone I meet is my superior in some way. And in that way, I can learn from them. And great leaders are great learners. And they take all the assets they've assembled and they make sure they can not only teach them, but learn from them. And by the way, this is not just a feel-good statement. If you walk out into the street and you run into somebody packing your groceries, for example, that person is your superior in some way, whether you like to admit it or not. They may have a talent that you don't have. They may have more physical endurance. They may have an ability to take more pain and uncertainty. They might pay more attention to their child than I do, or be a better neighbor than I am. I don't know. But everyone I meet is my superior in some way. And by the way, whether you're dealing with customers or colleagues or stakeholders, if you want people to trust you, let them teach you something. The word understanding means to stand under. And when you do that, they will invite you to teach them as well. I used to say this 30 years ago, my God, it's so much more, but I mean, it's never been untrue. And here's the funny thing, much as we think we live in uniquely disruptive times, I've been saying this statement since 1993 when I landed in Sri Lanka, and it's never stopped being true. And that is, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And indeed, Tom Peters tells us, building on that, there will be only two types of companies, the quick and the dead. So agile is often being, hurled around. I would just give you one caution. Beware any great idea that becomes a methodology, bureaucracy, or system. So TQM was fantastic, and then they tried to make a box out of it. Six Sigma was magnificent, and then somebody tried to make a system, some certified black belt, triple black belt, and they virtually destroyed 3M's innovation, even with a GE leader that had to throw it all overboard. So just be careful. These are all magnificent ideas, but the moment somebody capitalizes it and puts a trademark and says, here's the certified guy from the Institute, run the other way, because they're now selling you a bureaucracy rather than customizing wisdom to your specific needs. So two types of companies, the quick and the dead, but be truly agile. And true agility means basically you get rid of everything that gets in the way of what in his heyday, when GE was a company to emulate, Jack Welch used to call the 3 S's: speed, simplicity, and self-confidence. We all want to speed up, and that means we have to simplify. And that means we must have the self-confidence to be transparent, to be open, and to engage. All right, next slide, please. So it's not the pandemic, it is the human response to the pandemic. Just understand that COVID by itself is a virus. It is not what is causing world hunger, world disruption, world paralysis. That is our human response. And Sri Lanka has now turned a corner and is having a human response which is far more sane and productive by targeting zonally rather than just shutting down the whole island, realizing that after 3 economic downgrades, we simply cannot carry on, and that economic suicide is not a medical strategy. We need to have economic health to provide public health. We have excellent professionals, and South Asia is living in a charmed immunological corridor for whatever reason. If you simply look at it, Asia has 60%, all of Asia, 60% of the world's population, and about 16% of the ascribed COVID deaths. With India's COVID deaths not even topping 200,000 yet, We are, for whatever reason, this is not a COVID discussion. I simply want to say that our human response has to respond to the chips we've been given. And the chips we've been given are a lot more encouraging for whatever reason. And I think we are starting to take better advantage of that. So remember, it's not the pandemic. Don't disempower yourself. It's now your human response to the pandemic and finding your voice in post-pandemic times and re-empowering yourself, your brand, your market promise. And this is why excellence matters so much. Because negative interactions right now, the alienating of customers, members or colleagues, being non-responsive to concerns and requests and fears, this is something we just cannot deal with right now. Angry, frustrated, frightened stakeholders who are combative, withdrawn, and less cooperative simply mean that you need more time and wear and tear to deal with them, rather than interacting with them with astute, discerning kindness. Just think about the waste. Forget about whether it's a good thing to do or a bad thing to do. Forget whether your mother told you so. The fact is we can't afford it. We can't afford to waste our energy in alienating people, pissing them off. We have energy that's already in short supply, and it has to be maximized and leveraged and focused, not wasted, simply because our emotional intelligence is not up to the task. In fact, the three types of intelligences that in Agile that is often talked about is the ego, which drives change, then the intuitive, which discerns patterns, and then the eco, which builds coalitions and integrates. So we need that eco intelligence as much as we need the driving intelligence. All right, next one, please. So one of the things that we learn is that excellence is not a long-term aspiration. It is the ultimate short-term strategy. And that's the good news about everything I'm saying, because you can do it now, you can do it this evening, you can do it tomorrow morning. It is the next 5 minutes or it's nothing. That's excellence. Excellence is the next 5 minutes. It's how you're going to sit down to dinner. It's going to be the time you spend responding to somebody who reached out to you. It's your creating tomorrow's framework. It is the next 5 minutes. It's nothing otherwise. It's just a bowl of bullshit otherwise. So next slide. So what is it? It is your next conversation. There's your excellence. How will you make that next conversation serve the needs of more people and move you quicker, further, faster? It's your next meeting. How will you make sure the meeting is not a bureaucratic, soul-destroying waste of time? And how will you make sure it is a chance for people to really engage, disagree, debate, converge, commit, agree, and then really ignite and activate? It's your next customer contact. How are you going to make sure that customer never wants to go anywhere else and lets you know what they need? It is your next opportunity to shut up and listen, which is, not something people sometimes don't enjoy doing, because they think the purpose of listening is for my golden voice to be heard in the aftermath. While your golden voice is a great treat so that it can be deployed to its ideal advantage, shut the hell up and listen, imbibe, take the gift of what someone is giving you. That's excellence. Listening is demanding. If you really listen, you're worn out. And it's easier to run around the park than it is to listen. I mean, you just say, oh my God, can I go back to not listening again? Yeah, go to your family. And they'll love you even though you don't listen to nearly enough. Okay, go ahead. It is your next moment of accountability. The next time you promised something and have to deliver it. It is, I mean, to me, this is all that exists right now. There is nothing in my life that can match communicating with you right now. That is all that matters. It's excellence or nothing, or else everything I've done up until now is a waste of time. I've said yes to this, so I fully am here with you, or will aim to continue to be here. Commitment to curing a screw up and not just managing its symptoms. We all screw up every day. Can I get to a root cause? Can I help my company or team resolve it? Get to the underlying issue rather than just juggle short-term cures, which aren't really cures, which are just symptom management. It's your next team meeting. When you have to congratulate your team, you have to challenge your team, you have to focus your team, you have to bond your team. And is that happening? It is the next time that you have to nurture and challenge talent. It is the next time when you have to both nurture and challenge. I've been coaching a number of senior leaders recently here, and as one person said to me, I don't think they really want me to win. And so because she wasn't sure they wanted her to win, the challenges they were throwing down were not being picked up. But as we shifted that and got her to have those conversations and coach some of her bosses, so they recommitted to her growth if she could show them certain developmental milestones, then the challenge, by that nurturing, they opened up the gateway to the challenges being energizing rather than overwhelming. We'll all do things for people who believe in us. Every time I ask people who's the best leader you have, they rarely tell me of somebody who never challenged them. They usually tell me of somebody of immensely high standards who kicked their butt, but they always knew they wanted them to win. And they were utterly fair on that topic. All right, next. Excellence is your next opportunity to give support to a flagging colleague. Somebody who's being overwhelmed, somebody who has a crisis at home, somebody who's just having a dispiriting day. It's your next act of kindness outside the workplace where it's needed. I was just hearing about, this is back when we were still flying a little more readily than we can today. I just heard a story from a friend that their last memory of a flight they took was a pilot coming out, and the person in the front had the wheelchair, and the pilot said, would you mind if I could just wheel you down the jetway? It was a way to get the person moving and let the other passengers disembark. But it was also the captain making that person not feel rushed or a problem or an issue. And it was hard not to get emotional, because when was the last time you've seen a captain wheeling down a wheelchair passenger, having a chat with them as they go? I don't mean rushing them down the jetway and throwing them onto the baggage claim or something, but I mean actually escorting them. So it's the next act of kindness where it's needed. And it's everywhere, every day. Excellence is your appreciation extended to somebody for support you've received. It's a chance to offer or to share your wisdom to solve other people's problems, even if you get no recognition for it. It's the next moment you can convert an insignificant task seemingly into a model of excellence. Next. So look, it's your last 5 minutes now. It's your next 5 minutes. Excellence is a portal, not a barrier to fresh possibility. You have two jobs always. You have to improve the present to deliver today's needed performance that your customer and shareholders expect, but you must also create the future. And that means you must look ahead to where the future is unfolding. And you have to do these two things as well. Break your chains. Break your chains. The outmoded, the dysfunctional, the defunct, and protect the roots, your values, your culture, your character, your essence, what you're proud of, who you ultimately are. And we've often said this to people, that if you want to enlarge your results, enlarge your relationships. We used to say nothing can be built or sustained that is larger than the relationships on which it's based. Nothing can be built or sustained that is larger than the relationships on which it's based. Isn't that true? So if you want to enlarge your results, enlarge your relationships. As the relationships get bigger, so do the results and the opportunities and the possibilities that come with them. And the last slide, because I want to shift to taking questions so we can make this really tapered to your needs. Go ahead. If I were anybody listening, you have a very simple scorecard. The scorecard is no different now for excellence than at any other time. It's just that what you fill in will be different. This is not a balanced scorecard. This is simply an excellence scorecard for the times. And it has just 4 quadrants. Digitization, because that genie is out of the hat. We need it. We're going to be 80% in the cloud within 5 years, probably, at a far faster clip than we were anticipating. But we have to make sure digitization solves actual problems and is not just an express highway to digital efficiency and hijinks and something that creates nothing that solves any real problems. The second is customer success, not customer satisfaction. But in this era, we have to look at how can we be best known for helping our customers succeed? How can we understand them enough and their problems and their challenges and become their trusted advisors and allies and partners such that customer success becomes our metric? And again, as with any scorecard, you would write down indicators of this. Processes. Well, you can't have digitization and bureaucratic processes. It doesn't work. If you're going to be leaner, meaner, and more agile, then we have to have processes that are stress tested for value and for customer relevance, for not wasting time or cost, and not impeding your ability to be flexible and to shift quickly. And of course, that crucial one that always gets put at the end, teams of leaders. It's not leaders. Leaders atomistically by themselves, just as in a football match or a cricket match, you may have the greatest individual players and you may never win a game. So teams of leaders are people who multiply each other's capabilities and talents rather than nullifying and annulling them. They give each other energy rather than leech or suck energy from each other. And it would be a privilege, of course, to work with any of you on your scorecard, but that's one that you can work on, and it will give you a real grounding in excellence. And then you monitor it, and like the balanced scorecard, you make sure you have a combination of lag and lead indicators. Lag indicators tell you how you did. Lead indicators tell you how you're likely to be doing. And I will finish them with just 3 little quick observations and take your questions. Number one, a lot of UN circles are talking about ESG as being necessary for corporate success. E is a commitment to environment, S to social and society, and G to governance. you will realize all of these require human capital, and all of these have to do with excellence. How are we going to be a positive sum environmental contributor, social catalyst, and model of governance for an economy that works for everybody? The outdated shareholder-based economy reigning for 50 years, Deloitte, Pew, and others tell us is not going to last. It has been showing over 50 years declining return on assets and has produced the greatest income inequality since the Great Depression. If you really want to see a pandemic, that is one, an economic one. So ESG, remember that. The second thing I'd like to say is that the World Economic Forum and the UN and others have been looking at what they think are the 4 biggest traits or skills or abilities or aptitudes that'll be needed by 2025. And they are analytical thinking, creativity, leadership, and social influence. If you're not doing something about inculcating that, you're crazy. And I'll take questions because there are very practical ways you can do it, and anyone can afford to do it, and no one should be able to not afford to do it. And finally, personally, for excellence, remember, there are 2 types of virtues. What we call resume virtues, which is where you broadcast and try to impress, and eulogy virtues, which is about your impact and your humanity and what you meant to people and who you served. If you really want to be excellent, don't buy into the garbage that says that we can build a company or a culture only on resume values, especially after what the world's been through and where it's transitioning. We need eulogy values as well, but we need them now, not when the eulogy is actually being heard. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Omar. I think that was an excellent overview of your thoughts on how we could go forward as excellence. So once I think there was a saying by Aristotle that excellence is not an act, but it's a habit. So it's proven from what you say that it has come as a habit by individuals to make that extra mile in any organization or in anyone's journey towards that. With this now, in the current situation, in the pandemic situation that we face now as a crisis, how would we still move or improve for excellence given the new social developments and the environment, as you said, with the ESG, where we will come up with the excellence from people? How can we enhance that?
So, look, I think, as I said earlier, everybody uses the pandemic as a justification for things they are or aren't doing. And I just keep reminding people that the pandemic is simply a stimulus. It's a new variable. It's a factor. And in fact, countries and economic zones will not be equal in that regard. So Sri Lanka has a great opportunity, I think, and your organizations have a great opportunity, as I said, to pick your human response, as I was saying in that slide. And I think you must not disempower yourself and wait for someone to tell you what to do. And so, I mean, there are things, of course, you have to deal with the central bank, you have to deal with the economic backdrop, you have to deal with currency fluctuations, you have to deal with non-performing loans, you have to deal with all kinds of things that the pandemic has left you with but then it's now again your human response. I mean, it's interesting, some of the greatest fortunes. Fortune magazine was created during the Great Depression because people wanted to think about creating great fortunes. The easy chair, where the lean back chair was invented during the Great Depression because people came back tired and fatigued and they needed to do that. So it is fascinating how many number of innovations have come out of the worst recessions because the old rules didn't work. and we had to reimagine and reset. So all I would do is, the short answer is define excellence. Take that scorecard, define excellence for your customers today and in the likely emerging period, and decide where you're going to be competitive, differentiated, capability-based, without competing with China on cost or Walmart on price for your industry.
Right. Thank you, Mark. So another area that what is more important is when we go into developing leaders and teams to make the processors or the technology or whatever, is one thing is the budgets. So many organizations, the first thing when there are situations that gets cut is the budget. So then development of people for striving for excellence is a question. So how would you advise some thoughts on organizations, how they could minimize with the minimum budget that they can enhance these leaderships and develop teams?
Okay, so look, I'm going to say a couple of controversial things. But I hope true and helpful things. First of all, stop training people. I mean, you might think that's a really shocking statement from me, but I'm not a trainer. I haven't been a trainer for years because I'm not sure what skills are going to be needed. Training is about skill transfer. I think it's perfectly appropriate to temporarily, until you're sure what skills are needed, to defer your training budget expansion. But what you must put some money into is what we call coaching your leaders so that they can lead the organization. And think about the effect that one GM has and how many people they touch. So if there were a budgetary constraint, I would say everybody listening here, every organization can probably manage to coach one person, get one person coached. Anybody. And when we coach, for example, we believe coaching has to have 3 dimensions. It has to be stakeholder based. So you build that your stakeholders tell you whether your coaching is actually meaningful. It's not just a private enterprise. It helps the whole organizational network. Number 2, it has to have a project in the middle of it that the person can use as a leadership lab, a microcosm of the culture you want to build, a project you would have done anyway. But now you do it the way that excellence mandates, and it becomes a prototype. Then, it becomes a learning. And that project, if done well, will pay for the whole thing. Will pay for the whole expenditure by the improvements you get, by the waste you don't have. And then number 3, behavioral improvement. So that leader, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And whether the best person to coach is the CEO or a GM or a frontline manager who is dealing with your most important brand or customer base or geography, only you can decide. Maybe you can coach 4 people. And those 4 people, with the number of people that they affect, they can be the source of training. They can be the source of excellent education and coaching being transmitted across your organization when you don't currently have the funds to put 200 people through a program. Right? So you find, who do those people report to? And put that person through an organic, strategic, results-based, so there's an ROI from it, exercise. So, and then if that happens, then you're able to touch the whole organization. All right, so that's my short answer, is find out basically what it is that your minimum, whatever it is, I mean, 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, but in key roles that have an impact on everybody. Start there. And I bet you everybody could do that. And then, those 4 things I mentioned, analytical thinking, creativity, leadership, social impact, those are not training issues. Those are cultural capability, educational issues that have to be role modeled and demonstrated by leaders. And that's the approach I take.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Omar. Yeah.
Sorry, where did you lose me?
The cultural side part.
Yeah, I was simply saying that if these few people are at the epicenter of an organization, and if you can get them coached, then those people have a ripple effect on everybody. And I was saying these four things I mentioned, analytical thinking, creativity, leadership, and social impact, are not training issues. They're cultural, educational, coaching issues. And they can be embodied by the few people that you can get this kind of attention to. So I would make it Pareto based. The 20 who have an effect on the 80, less is more. And let them be the educators if you can't hire outside educators. Get them the support to do it.
Okay. Another one area is what we are now, when we most often customers no longer are buying products or services, but what is seen is they are coming to buy more experiences. So does this have a direct impact on how teams collaborate with within the organizations to view that experience to the customers, or what is your thoughts how a team could further enhance that collaboration?
That's a very wise question, because the biggest problem I hear around the world, and a big problem in the Sri Lankan organizational culture, is the lack of internal customer service. People operating in bunkers, people saying this is not my area. And of course, what we learned from excellence is it's all your area. In the next 5 minutes, if you have retarded excellence anywhere, you've retarded it everywhere. And so what people come in for is they don't come to buy a department, they come to buy an experience. They come to buy the seamlessness, hopefully, of an experience whereby their financial lives, their banking lives are entrusted to the right people, and they know that that entire team will fight to get them looked after. If, what often happens, they have to find that one person who is the problem solver, and they know that they don't even want to talk to the departments because they won't do anything. But if they can get to that one guy will move mountains for them. Then the problem is that one guy, if they move somewhere else, they'll go with them. Then that's not an achievement of your organizational culture. So look, I think it's not just in banking. It's in hospitality, it's in retail, it's in anything. People have been, as I said, hit hard. And they want not to be aggravated further. They want someone to maybe tell them, okay, something is no longer possible, I'll live with that. But tell me what is possible and make it possible and deliver it with excellence and deliver it with reliability and deliver it with speed. And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to win that trust, the confidence, and that cannot happen. You know, the funny thing is, if you don't trust that your internal group will rally together and provide lateral service, horizontal service to each other, then you cannot be confident about promising the customer anything. Because you just don't know if you can deliver it. Then you know that all you can do is chase it. And too many senior leaders chasing people is what keeps us from creating the future, because those leaders are not then tapping in to the future aims. On the other hand, if you ask the people, they will tell you, but this person is such a control freak that they insist on having their fingerprints on everything. And they're both true. And the absence, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, is that you cannot go from a control economy or a control hierarchy to delegating. You're going to have disaster. To go from control to delegating, you have to go through coaching to then supporting, challenging, delegating tasks, then delegating outcomes, and eventually empowering. So what happens is that somebody who's always controlled now is told, let go. They do, and their people don't know what to do with it. And there's total disaster. And they say, you see? And then they reassert themselves as dictator. That wonderful line by somebody who said, the people need me is always the alibi of the dictator. They need you because you haven't grown them. The dictator will always say the betterment of my people. That's always the alibi for hierarchy or worse.
Right. Thank you very much, Omar. I think we have come up to a final session. Before we wind up, just to keep the audience reminded, Sensei does conduct various coaching programs, and they are always open for you to contact them. And most certainly, Mr. Ranjan De Silva is willing to be in contact with you. If there are anybody who's really interested in further continuing any programs with Sensei, most certainly is welcome to contact Mr. Ranjan De Silva or Mr. Omar Khan, but Mr. Ranjan De Silva's local mobile number I can communicate. Is it okay, Ranjan? I hope it's okay.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
So you can contact him on 0777 324 2800. So he's in Sri Lanka since I'm looking at the Asian operation. So if those are any candidates who are thinking of pursuing further coaching programs and want to develop their careers further, could contact him.
Or you want to build a scorecard for your organization, or you simply just want a mirror held up, we'd be very, very happy for anybody who was here to come and speak with you.
I put the number in the chat box if anyone needs it.
Yeah, okay, right. Thank you, Ran. So on behalf of APB Continuous Professional Development Committee, my sincere gratitude and thank you to Mr. Omar Khan for willingly accepting our invitation to share his thoughts this evening on this forum with our members, as well as Mr. Ranjan De Silva, and we have, I think, Mr. Rohan Dias, another consultant from Sensei, and Pratana. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. This session we do from APB for members as a continuous professional development on an ongoing basis. So thank you very much all participants for giving encouragement to APB and logging in for these webinars and programs on a continuous basis. So we have seen numbers rising. So it's your patronage that helps us to give you a better outcome of new programs and development. And of course, it's these efforts would not go well without my continuous professional development committee members supporting me in getting this organized daily. And the APB president and the council members, advisors who have encouraged APB and the continuous development committee for having these programs continuously. So until we meet again next time, thank you very much for all participants, and wish you all a good night and a safe and a healthy stay. Thank you very much. Good night to everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Omar. Good night. Thank you, Ranjan.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.